Hello and welcome to Ashley Haden's Political Breakdown, a show where me and a guest talk about the week's fucking dreadful news. This week, my guest is Ashish Suri. Hello, how are we?
Good. How are you, sir?
Surviving. How's the lockdown going for you?
Slow and lazy. But I've managed to go through a lot of like books that I had on my wish list, and that's about
Yeah?
it. Yeah, it's
Nice.
been what it is.
Well, that's all of the care I've got for someone else. So let's start with some of the news, shall we? Start with, let's say, the biggest news of this week in the UK.
Yeah.
Which is Dominic Cummings still. First question I want to ask you is there a point to still be discussing Dominic Cummings?
I'm always torn on this because I say yes or no. Yes, in the sense because it's at this point I feel it's more like a standoff between the public and the government. And no, in the sense like this should have been dealt with ages ago. When it came out, deal with it, get over it. Like this country's got locked down.
You froze for a solid 30 seconds there, or 10 seconds. So can you re-say that?
Oh yeah, I'm like I have a yes and no answer to that question.
Yeah.
Like yes, in the sense this is now a standoff between the public and like the government now, but no, in the sense this seems trivial to compare to what's actually going on in the country, and it should have been like it came out, you dealt with it, just go beyond it. Just the thing that they dealt with it, it's not really like acceptable and receptive to the wider public, I guess.
Well, I mean, they've dealt with it terribly.
Yep.
I mean, how the fact that they didn't come out and apologise at any point and lied about it. This is the thing, because we had on Monday we had Dominic Cummings doing his speech,
Yeah,
which is mental anyway, because you're seeing an advisor
mm-hmm.
in the Rose Garden of Number 10 doing a press conference about shit that he's done, and that isn't something that's normally happens.
It just what annoyed me was like if you I read through his transcript for the speech, right? I didn't really watch it. I don't watch these things. It's better I read. But there was this bit where he went, I know and I understand that the public is angry. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Like the public is angry. What are you gonna do about it?
Well, what was interesting is at one point during the speech, he claimed that in the press conference that he had previously, in previous blogs, had warned about the dangers of SARS and something like a coronavirus pandemic happening. Now, what was interesting about that is that everyone went to his blogs, of course, found the bit where he said it. Turns out that he had actually edited that blog after he came back from Durham to put those points in.
It's like when you're on Facebook and Facebook is like 5 years ago you put this up, do you want to share it again? And it's really stupid, but for some reason you'll go and edit it. So like, 5 years ago I was a smug prick, you can just go and check it now. That's basically what he's done.
Yeah, and I mean these are the type of moves that you don't expect from someone who everyone seemingly considers a genius for all of this. I mean he ran a god awful Brexit campaign. But what they're missing with regards to, for me, what they're missing with regards to coronavirus versus Brexit, you cannot use the same rules because this is an ideology. Coronavirus isn't an ideological thing.
It's just super annoying, and this is now conspiracy theory side of things now. But did anybody realize that everybody's blatantly pointing out there have been 3 people who are a part of SAGE. They've come out and said the lockdown should not be eased right now. A lot of other European countries who are sort of easing down on their lockdown, their mortality rate has gone down to a double figure per day, which is still a lot of people dying. Doesn't matter how big the population is. but the UK is still in a 3-figure mortality rate.
Yeah, I think we
You
had
know?
the other day. I mean, I think yesterday was plus 300.
Yeah, 320 something, and it's amazing. But then people are like, oh yes, it's a really obvious thing that they ease the lockdown now, because then Brexit's gonna happen. Nobody's gonna like, even if you go on a news website, when you like select politics, what you get is coronavirus first and the politics that goes with the virus, and then there'd be news about Brexit. It's just
I mean, there has been some stuff with regards to Brexit that we will get onto.
but
But I want to stick with the stuff on the coronavirus at the moment. I make you right. I think you are right with regards to some of the stuff that, like the lockdown and easing the lockdown, can have something to do with not only making sure that we have an argument for Brexit, but also as an attempt to steer the conversation away from Dominic Cummings, because
yeah,
Dominic Cummings has been the news for a week or so. I think that Dominic Cummings is still a very important story to talk about, because this is the reason why we're here.
yep,
It's Dominic Cummings who said, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. It's our government that have said, you need to listen to us. Stay safe, stay indoors. It is them. And when you get to a point where trust is going to be so important with regards to the tracing app,
yeah.
how can you possibly trust a government that, even with their own rules, not only doesn't stick to them, but lies about it afterwards?
It's just horrible, because like you reach a point, regardless of what your political stance is, if you're a lefty, if you're right wing, or if you're even in the center. Once the government is elected, people do come to a conclusion that, okay, this is there for a while now, let's
Yeah.
see how they behave, you know if they do
Hmm.
anything good or if they do anything bad. And the resolutions that were being made, like before the lockdown, even during the lockdown, that we're going to reach X amount of testing capacity, right? Where we're gonna start getting more PPE and whatnot. And then you have these diversionary tactics, so to say, that every week some other news comes out. Even if it's not generated in the UK, it's being pushed out that way in the country. Donald Trump going, like, having go at China or like the WHO, that they're not being honest. But
Well,
when something
that's
like that,
because. Go on. No, continue.
that's like something like that. It's outside the realm of this country. What you have to look at the domestic side. It's not, and it gets pushed. Like the government was asked about, oh, what do you think about Donald Trump's comments, regarding that drug? I can't pronounce its name, hydroxy something.
Yeah.
And his claim that
Hydroxychloroquine, I believe.
yes, that's the one. And it's just like, and the government's like, we're going to focus on what's happening in our country, and whatever he said, when we can't comment on that. And to me, that was like, that is a really, that blew my mind. I did not expect something like that. I was like, oh my god, they really care. And then something like the Dominic Cummings thing happens, and then I'm like, oh, I don't think they care. That was a bluff. No.
Well, I mean, saying in a polite way that Trump's an idiot is not caring. That's just easy political points. I've seen a lot, especially this week, of and this is a continual thing for years, frankly,
Mm,
where something comes out, a big piece of news, and then there are other pieces of news, and
yep.
because we're on a 24-hour news turn, things get forgotten,
Yep.
and we seem to have an inability, and I think we have the capability, but we don't seem to use it, where we can only focus on one piece of news at a time, where we do have the ability to realize that all pieces of news we can look at. So, like, just because Trump's saying that, or just because we're looking at Cummings, doesn't mean that we've forgotten of that Matt Hancock has changed the definition of testing, so that it's the capacity that we can do testing and not the actual amount of tests that we do.
I think the other annoyance is like, it reaches a point where it becomes like more condescending and insulting. Like, don't treat the public who actually voted you in as toddlers. People are
Yeah.
gonna remember. Like the whole when the Cummings thing happened, they were like, oh, we gave out the suggestions and everything. There was a tweet. I don't know if it was by the government. It was number 10, or maybe the conservatives on Twitter, which said, if you don't follow the rules, you're breaking the law
Yes.
and stuff like that. That tweet was removed. It's just been removed from the face of the earth within the
Well,
last 7 days.
nothing gets, and this is the thing with online. Nothing gets forgotten.
And that's the thing. They were expecting that, oh, if we say that he didn't do anything wrong, and if we remove the trace of that, nobody's going to figure it out. And I was like, just, you're insulting people by expecting everyone to be an idiot and be like, oh, yes, 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 you must be right. You said this. Like,
Well, the government's initial Matt Hancock was asked by a vicar this week about the potential of reviewing the fines given to people for a break in lockdown, especially with regards to childcare. The same thing that Cummings said. The government came out and said they will not review fines issued to families who travel to get childcare in lockdown, despite Cummings. And you're going, well, why are you not reviewing these if they've done exactly what your knobhead has done?
this and the other bit is, all right, you know what, you don't want to review the fines, fine, don't do that. You don't want to take like, you don't want to have a retrospective view of like the legalities and the orders and what you set out, fine Cummings.
Yeah.
It's just that, don't review
Well,
the law,
sack him,
fine
get
him.
rid of him, drop him from a high fucking bridge, take him to a long pier and let him keep on fucking walking. Do something that doesn't look like what you're doing is you've taken all of the trust that the country has given you and told them to go fuck themselves.
Basically.
Because the contract, the contact app and the tracing app that is going to be coming out, it's come out now, but it can't be used, which is where this is one of the things that they've done. The tracing app, it was on Thursday. They said, oh, well, it's out on Thursday. And then everyone went, well, we don't have enough people to actually trace. So we can't do this. But, go on.
It's and can I call that out? That is utter bullshit. So I work in IT, like software development and like setting up analytics platforms and whatnot.
Yeah.
So when you, like, for a mobile app, when you first release it, is what we call like a soft launch. A soft launch is
Yeah.
basically, you don't promote it, you just put it out there, see who's using it, what's happening, and do a lot of like pre-launch testing and post-launch testing. You're doing focus groups and everything. I cannot believe that something of this severity, right, requires an app, and whosoever is creating or building or developing or programming or coding that application, right, did not think this through. Especially something that is going to be in the public eye. The whole of the country, like, the government's boasting about it, right? And I cannot believe they did not think that they wouldn't have enough people, or they don't.
You're going to have, you froze again, so go back. Say
Which
it again.
which bit
You're,
did you
you,
miss?
you're up to, you cannot believe that this app.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's what I'm saying. I cannot accept the fact that whosoever created, designed, developed, coded, programmed this app did not think through the fact that who are we going to, who is going to test this app out, right? They didn't tell the government that we are going to be ready with this on X date. Can you make sure there are people who we can test this out with?
The thing is like there's already apps in the world currently being used to do this in countries like India. In a part of India with like 32 million people in the city, they've got an app that's working.
Yeah.
Go, well, why the fuck, when they've got vastly more people than we do in this country, do they manage to get a fucking app working? but months ago as well. This isn't something that we should be happy is coming out now. This is something that should have been there months ago.
I think it's around the idea of like false hope, and when it doesn't come out, false victory.
Well, what's interesting with the app is that Matt Hancock has rejected calls from the Human Rights Committee for a new law to enshrine privacy protections for digital contract tracing. So it's saying that there are already protections in the law and that you can trust the government, which is always a fucking worry. So this is the Joint Committee for Human Rights, the Matrix Chambers, which is a set of barristers' chambers, and the Ada Lovelace Institute have all advised that there is new legislation needed for this app. So even before this app is ready,
Yeah.
what this is going to be, and I put my cards out on the table. I do not trust governments. I
Oh,
do not trust
right.
people, and I certainly do not trust governments, especially a government like the Conservative Party, who have for years used a lot of data mining and not been. I've never been comfortable with how they use a lot of the data. And what we're going to give them here is free reign.
It's I they you the thing is like the NHS, I think they were going to release the code for the application, so as you know it's open to the public and they know that data has not been taken away. But we live in an age where if something is on your phone, you might as well realize that your information is being collected. And
Yes.
a simple example of it, I'll give you a really simple example. The latest phones, take Samsung, take the Android phone or the iPhone or whatnot.
Yeah.
You can use your thumbprint to unlock it. Yes, you
Hmm.
can use a face scan, which is basically around like a retina scan, but they say
Yeah.
it's face scan, right? And then you do like mobile banking and all. A lot of times you use your phone for ID, right? You have your cards on it when you travel. At least in this country,
Yes.
you use. What's happened is like you've created a digital clone. That's really easy to create a digital clone. It's got your thumbprint, it's got your retina scan, it's got your bank details,
Yeah. I'm big on not using any of that.
It's the same. I don't use mobile banking. It's not that because my phone
I,
crashes a
I,
lot
I
and
mean,
whatnot.
even with mobile banking, if someone wants to take my banking details, they can pay off all of my fucking debts. I am not the person for them to fucking think that they've won anything.
It's just it just surprises me. There can be so many security breaches. The
Yes,
first one already happened when they accidentally released the list of all the contact traces.
I make you right. Let's move on to another one of the big stories of the week, which is Donald Trump and Twitter.
Ah,
Now,
it's
I rarely talk about Trump on these things because he bores me. But the Twitter uh, uh, argument this week, I think, is very interesting for the future of social media and the internet as a whole. So, um, Trump has signed an executive order this week
mhm.
against social media. Um, what's interesting about it, of course, this all came from Twitter actually growing a pair and putting a fact check on one of his tweets
Yeah,
about uh, election fraud,
yeah,
and then putting another one of his tweets behind a warning for glorifying violence.
yep.
Is this an about time for social media to do this, or is this Twitter taking a step forward? Because Mark Zuckerberg, who I'm quite sure is a human, um, he's against this. He doesn't think that Twitter should be fact checking. Doesn't think that social media should be fact checking.
I it, Again, it's more like a yes or no kind of a thing. You shouldn't be fact
I'm not
checking.
looking for anything like there's bound to be nuance, and that's what
Yeah,
we like on political breakdown.
but it's about look. If it's just someone who did this once like in 10 years or like a year, one of their posts got reported. This is someone who I think he's got nomophobia, which is like the fear of losing your mobile. That is what I feel the president of the United States has. And and it becomes a cult. It needed to be done. And again, if Mark Zuckerberg says you can't do it, it's like fair enough. You don't do it with your product anyways. And if somebody else is doing it, you've just passed an opinion. It's fine.
Well, this executive order, it aims to narrow the protections from liability that social media services have at the moment. In the US, it is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
What?
Go on.
I was going to be like, what are the actual implications when it comes into play?
At the moment, before the executive order, the reason that social media platforms had such protections from being sued is because they were seen as platforms and not publishers.
Okay.
This executive order is looking to remove that and putting more emphasis on them, which will create two possibilities. Number one, it will mean that to protect themselves, social media platforms will start in big swathes deleting.
Yeah.
Getting rid of anything that leaves them susceptible to someone suing them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would see on like a Daily Mail website or something like this, where stuff too far gets deleted.
Yeah, yeah.
The other way is all social media washing their hands and saying we're not publishers, we are just software. That's all we are.
Yeah.
So they can put anything they like, and at that point you are creating the Wild West online.
Yeah.
So if you want to put down child pornography, they're not going to fucking remove it. If you want to say that every black person should die, they're not going to remove it. If you want to incite violence, hatred, anything, they are merely the piece of software.
Yeah.
They are the two things that can potentially happen from here, in my opinion.
And so Zuckerberg, what did he say? Was his stance like against what Twitter's done or like the legislation?
No, Zuckerberg is against what Twitter did. He does not believe that you should fact check, which is a big concern, because we know nowadays just how social media, especially Facebook, how it can change people's minds, how it can solidify people's conspiracies.
To me, it just feels like he's still annoyed by the fact that he couldn't get a hang on Twitter. It's just as simple as that. Facebook, I think a couple of years ago, they were on this mental spree wherein like every other social media platform that they could like sort of encompass within the Facebook brand, they tried to do it. And they tried to do it with Twitter as well. They tried to outright buy it. The bid was denied. And then when it became public that Facebook was trying to get Twitter, they were going to come in with like another bid. I think a day or two before the next bid was supposed to come in, Twitter went public.
Mm-hmm.
So they floated shares and whatnot. And that's basically, I think he's still angry with that. And now by doing this, Twitter's actually taking a stance. It generally, amongst the so many social media tools that you have, it might be a little too late, or a lot of people are going to say that, but even then they are actually doing something. And if you think about like something like Facebook, how far off are we from the Cambridge Analytica debacle that happened? And Facebook's still not taken like any like out and out constructive action to that. They reacted.
They're not going to.
Yeah.
Because they're happy about it. I mean, it's the problem with billionaires. Is billionaires, once you get to that point, no one's telling you no, and you think you have all of the power. Like during the coronavirus, and this came out this week. Where is it? Yeah. So American billionaires saw their fortunes rise by $434 billion during the US lockdown.
Oh,
That was just between March and mid-May.
I'm gonna deviate a little bit. I know you're not that much into like professional wrestling and everything. We were at that gig. I don't even remember. But here's what happened, and this is an example of how messed up the system or the structure is over there.
Yeah,
So once the lockdown came into effect in the states were separately shutting down, and
yeah,
professional wrestling, like basically live events, were sort of being cancelled. And there was this hoopla about, with the WWE and the other big professional wrestling companies that are there. So this is what happened. So WWE has a deal with they have their TV deals for different channels, right? And as per that deal, they're only allowed an X number of taped shows.
yes.
And after that, like they have to produce live programming, and they usually save that for the holiday season. So the Thanksgiving episode, New Year's Day, or like Christmas Eve or something like that,
Yeah.
right? And they did a few taped episodes, and then somebody pointed out to them that, oh, we've got a deal. If we do more taped shows, we might. It's not that the TV channels or the companies are going to break those deals, but it gives them the ground when they start renegotiating. So this is what actually happened in the state of Florida, where they have their performance center. There was a huge amount paid by a certain family to President Trump's. I don't know. There's some pack about like value pack or something. Basically, his election campaign fund, right? And 2 days later, professional wrestling was declared an essential business within the state of Florida.
Oh yes, and both of the McMahons are involved in particular White House groups
Yes,
that are being used for like advice and how to move forward,
yes.
which
It,
is
it's
baffling.
amazing. You look at the people who are part of that advisory group, that committee, right? You have the CEO for WWE. You have Dana White, who runs UFC. You have the guy from the NBA, and I think the NFL's there as well.
It's ridiculous.
It's
It,
amazing.
let's continue with rich people being assholes. But let's go to this side of the pond. There was a new study from Warwick University, and the highest 1% of British earners receive nearly 17% of all of the country's income ahead, and this was ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is analysis by Warwick University, the London School of Economics, and the Resolution Foundation.
Yeah.
Now, what they've previously, this is from previously confidential HMRC data, and it showed that the top 1% had a growing, a much larger slice of income than previously thought. Now, what they looked into is capital gains, and they actually took capital gains into account for a change, because when we talk about the income disparity,
Yeah.
tend to miss out capital gains. But what they found is that the majority of capital gains, be it paid via dividends or investments or things like this, the majority are from like your own company. So instead of being paid an income,
Yeah.
you would pay yourself a dividend,
Uh-huh.
which is taxed differently. The capital gains, the maximum tax on capital gains over £50,000 is 20%, comparative to the over 40% you'd pay for income. So if you give yourself £1 million capital gains dividend, put that on capital gains, you're paying 20%. If you did that as income, you'd be paying 40% on it.
Is this in line with the footballers getting rich as well?
I mean, footballers are in a different fucking world to all of this, aren't they, with the amount they think? But what they found is that official data showed that in 2017 to 18, there was 55 billion of taxable capital gains recorded, more than double from 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
once inflation is taken into account, the majority of taxable capital gains, which is £34 billion, were received by 9,000 individuals. Each made gains of over £1 million or more. So straight away there, let's say these people aren't doing dodgy shit with their tax. They are. Almost certainly they are. But let's say that they're not, and they are absolute square, paying all the taxes they should do. Putting all of this potentially as capital gains instead of income tax means that they are saving themselves 20% of that money.
And you said like 9,000 people, at least $1 million each?
Yes, because it was 34 billion were received by 9,000 individuals.
And it's half, man. I can't even like because I read the news. It was like the claims that were being made for before, I think about a month ago, when they were like major companies were starting furloughing people, right?
Yes.
It was claimed that already I think a good fair amount, like 20 30, some a number between 20 to 30% was already claimed by the big companies. And it was just like that was money put out to save businesses, big and small alike. And it was just like when it's, you know how it is like when there's like fresh food in the market, so people in front of the queue get the fresh food, right? And coincidentally, people in front of the queue are the big companies. So even though the government puts it out that this is going to save the small businesses and whatnot, it's like, no, all that the small businesses are left with are like scraps from the bucket.
I would say that it was closer to, when there's a really poor part of the world and an Oxfam truck turns up with rice.
Yeah.
This is the rich people who can afford to eat getting to the front of the queue and taking the majority of the rice.
Yeah, definitely.
You're going, you don't need the rice. You're a fat cunt. You do not need this. They're going, but this is rice that I don't need to get into my rice that I have over here.
Yeah.
Because that's my special rice that I'm saving very much for when I'm peckish.
It's, oh my God. What was it before? Just about when they kicked the lockdown up, Richard Branson, they were going to ask the UK government for a bailout.
Yes. There's been so many companies that you look at and go, you're a billionaire. Why don't you put your hand in your pocket to fucking do this? Because a lot of these a lot of the tax they're getting, or they're using things like entrepreneurs tax, and they're able to knock so much off anyway. If you pay for a good tax man, you can save yourself a lot of fucking money anyway.
It's you know what? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I was like, you make an X amount of money, you have a certain lifestyle, right? I'll spend, if I make 100 quid a week, I'll spend it differently than if I make 1,000 quid a week. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. You need the money because you've got a big ass island. Those plumbers and those plumbing pipes, that electricity bill, it's not going to pay itself. You need that money. I get that. But this is what annoyed me. For a company that does not even have its European headquarters nearby, that's got tax, that's been set up in tax haven countries.
Yeah, we shouldn't have given anything to them.
What claim do you have? There are other countries in Europe who've just been like, if you're a company that's a tax haven based company, you are getting fuck all from us.
And
That
that's
has
right.
not been implemented in this country.
No, not at all. Let's go to America and talk about the fucking awful events of this week with the death of Mr. Floyd and the riots that have come after that. Frankly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this for a number of reasons. One, because it's America. Two, I'm a white guy, and frankly, my opinion doesn't fucking matter. And three, we could spend all year talking about the fucking atrocities that continue to happen.
Yeah.
So let's go over. Let's have an opinion from your self, as no doubt someone who has had to deal with racism quite a lot in the UK. Do you think that this is going to be a turning point for defeating racism in the US?
I doubt it. I
And
doubt it. I doubt it.
frankly, I don't think there's much more to be said.
It's somebody, I think it was Will Smith, but I don't want to misquote anyone. Somebody said that racism has not grown in the country, it's just being recorded now.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because this is an issue, I think, with the left, uh, especially a few years ago. So we say 10, 20 years ago, there was this idea in like universities and the left that
Yeah.
we are doing some real good. We are really making it better. And then you realize that maybe incrementally things have changed in
Yeah.
small amounts. But I always place it. I have an idea called knowledge inflation,
Okay.
which is the idea that although we are not as bad as we've ever been, which is always a thing. Oh, we were in a war. We had
Yeah.
the World War. That was terrible.
Back in my
If you
day.
look, yeah, if you look at what we have now in terms of information, knowledge,
Yeah.
our we've got all of history at our fingertips. We've got everything to be able to look back and go, this is all awful.
Yeah.
And you see it where we are today. If we're looking at a curve, we should be there, but we are fucking there. With everything that we've got in front of us, we should be so much further on than we are. And so the idea that it was worse back in the day doesn't really hold true when you compare to where we are to where we should be.
Uh, all right. This just to exemplify what you just said, right? I had someone nonchalantly ask me once on a date, really casually, and it had no malice behind it, right?
Mm.
I don't think they meant it as a joke. It was a genuine question. It wasn't meant to be disrespectful, but this is what the question was. Are you a full Indian?
I mean, do Indians come in diet?
I I know Russell Peters did a joke about, we reach a point where everybody's going to be a mixed breed and everybody's going to be beige. But I don't think, like, I look a little beige right now because I've got like a massive light on my face. But I don't know what prompted that question. And
It's a very weird way of asking it
yeah,
as well. Like if you wanted to know your fucking etymology, then there has to be a better way than trying to suggest that you're some form of like a version of Coke or Pepsi.
yeah.
Are you Indian Zero? Uh,
I'm
in
Indian without the
Max?
diabetes. But it's just one of those things. And like, I didn't take any offense, but it kind of made me like, it didn't make me sad, but I was like, in my head, I was just like, I know what you mean to ask, but in your way of trying to, maybe be politically correct or not offend me, you've just basically confused me more.
Oh, I mean, education is really the only way to solve uh, racism and potentially take a bit of power away from the people in charge. Because if you've got people in charge who are fundamentally racist, you're always going to have racism.
But I get that, but there's also this thing about, like, I don't, it's really like tricky to touch this, but there are people who are not white, who are not Caucasian, and they inherently promote racism as well.
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, it's the idea everyone's a cunt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Once you realise it's a lot easier to deal with people. Like the idea that only white people are racist is wrong. But especially at the moment, though, and what's going on, it frankly doesn't matter that other races are racist because it's the difference between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter.
yeah,
And we go,
yeah.
oh, all lives matter. They go, well, the
You're
people who say
missing the
that,
point.
yeah, they're going, well, all lives aren't being killed on the streets for no fucking reason at
Yeah,
the moment.
yeah,
I, I've with regards to all lives matter, especially the people who say it, they tend to be the people who will be screaming all lives matter, and what they're really saying is, I've scuffed me shoe from kicking this black man to death. They go, yeah, let us deal with your scuff after we've dealt with the main issue here.
it's yeah. Again, it's one of those what do you call it? Like who's more loud, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And people think like you know, yeah. It's like you said, it's something that that can be discussed for like eons.
yeah. So let's move on from this subject. Otherwise, we'll never get off of it. But let's do continue on some racism, because why not? This is from the Home Office from this week. The Home Office has what's that? Has drawn up plans to terminate the current system of allowing children refugees to be united with families in the UK. This is during the next round of talks with the EU. They will look to effectively end the system where unaccompanied minors, after fleeing conflict, more generally, are granted sanctuary in the UK. For or against allowing children to be back with their families? Oh, has he got again? It's an interesting question as well. I'll ask when he comes back. Because it goes on to other stuff. So where do we need to go through after that? There's another thing from. I reckon we'll go on to the kids' rights after this. Oh, we're going on about children refugees. Yeah, I think that'll be good. Has he come back yet? No, he hasn't come back yet. Personally, for me, if we're talking about this, we need to actually look after children refugees, and we should probably stop MPs from having to choose whether or not children refugees should be allowed in. I think it's the absolute bare minimum we should be doing, especially coming on from conflict. But there's very little else we can do. We'll go on to another piece of story while we're waiting for him. This is a new published from this week from the Kids Foundation. And the Kids Foundation published its annual rankings on children's rights in 182 countries. Iceland came first for the second year in a row, followed by Switzerland, Finland, and Sweden. UK ranked 169th out of 182 countries, 169th. We were behind countries like the Sudan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. It says something when you're on this list, you're behind Yemen, who are just being bombed to fuck at the moment. But this is a couple of points that they made about the UK was the country's poor treatment of Roma and Gypsy children was criticised. Also, the UK anti-terror strategy Prevent, which I have fucking spoken about tons and tons of times, which coming back connecting to audio, was found to have a stigmatizing effect on Muslim children. Are you back?
Yes. My apologies. Look, my machine just couldn't take all that racism chat. I just gave up.
Well, we'll move on from the child refugee stuff.
Sorry
And
about that.
no, do not worry, because I was just talking about a new report published by the Kids Right Foundation.
Which is?
The Kids Right Foundation is a foundation that looks into children's rights around the world,
Yeah.
and yearly they publish a ranking list of children's rights in 182 countries.
Mhm.
Number one is Iceland,
Yeah.
for the second year in a row, followed by Switzerland, Finland, and Sweden. UK ranked 169th from 182 countries. We are below Sudan, Iraq, Yemen, Saudi Arabia. They're all above us. Things that we've been criticised for is our poor treatment of Roma and Gypsy children, and also the UK's anti-terror strategy, Prevent, which has been found to have a stigmatising effect on Muslim children. I've spoken about Prevent tons and tons of times. I hate Prevent. I think it's one of the worst things that our government has come up with in an attempt to tackle terrorism, because it is based on like lying science, not real science, and is both racist and Islamophobic.
Can you give me like a really like a common man's view of it, like a one-line
Prevent.
definition? Yeah.
Well, as an example, Prevent basically is about getting university to spy on fucking Muslim children. It's the reason. It's making schools and universities as spies for the government, not allowing any form of critical thinking if it's from someone with color, because if they say something wrong, then it will go over and they'll be put onto a list and be put into a fucking de-radicalization camp, which we've put over the past 5 years, we've put thousands of children into de-radicalization camps, which is in of itself is fucking madness.
This,
But
it's fucking. I did not know about it, so I can't really. My opinion of it is going to be based on what you just told me in 30 seconds. But it's sad. That is disgusting.
it's a wonderful way of taking away freedoms from people, which is amazing that none of these fucking free speech gods who love nothing more than free speech, these right-wing knobheads, ever talk about Prevent. The reason I do not talk about Prevent is because it doesn't affect white people or them specifically. It mainly affects people of color, Muslims, and things. That's why no one talks about if those freedoms are being taken away.
My quick question: because between India and the UK,
Yep.
India after like 70 plus years of independence is still considered a developing country, and there are multiple reasons to it. Because we're like 40% or more of our economy is based on agriculture. We've the second largest population, and like loads of other things.
Yep.
But what what annoys me is and countries like the States,
Yep.
and even the UK at some points, they're considered developed countries,
Mm-hmm.
right? But even Canada for that matter. But then you had things about like what you just told me, and I was just like, you're just on the same level as us.
Well,
you know
developed countries do it with more razzmatazz.
yeah, it's
Like I mean, over in India with like
yeah.
Modi wants to be someone like Trump. Uh, you're still getting a lot of Muslims being killed for no other reason than the fact they're Muslim over in India. And there's
it,
I mean, I don't need to tell you about the issues of India, but I make you right with regards to we do awful stuff as well.
it's just, and the thing about like those things in India, it's just like, yes, The government's there. But in India, the left is shit.
Yes.
They are just as bad. Like they they're literally what's the term? I think a wolf in a sheepskin. That's the one. They're
Yeah,
just as bad.
wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just as bad. I think it was a couple of years ago, before the election last year, actually. I think. So the government, so the the leader of the government, not yeah, the prime minister comes from a state called Gujarat, right?
Yeah.
And they built a Statue of Unity, which is 3 times the size of the Statue of Liberty, right?
Hmm.
And they put in 3,000 crores, which, if I am to translate crores in pounds, yes. How much is a crore? 10 million, right?
Hmm.
So 1 crore is 10 million.
Yeah.
1,000 crore is like 10,000 million rupees,
Yeah.
right? So 30,000 million rupees was spent in building that.
Hmm.
And people were outraged. There's unemployment, there's poverty. How can the government do that? Whatnot. Now, completely agree with that. Not the time and place to have done that. But there was
Yeah.
an election coming, and their say was it's going to create jobs. Tourism's going to start booming and whatnot. Okay, acceptable. The left, when they were in power, India hosted the Commonwealth Games back in 2013. I'm going to say
Yeah. Delhi, wasn't it?
yes, right?
Yeah. That was a fucking
Commonwealth,
shit show, wasn't it?
Commonwealth Games, Delhi. I just want to do my fact check. 2010. Yes.
Yeah.
2010 Commonwealth Games. At that point, the left government coalition was in charge. The chairman of the Commonwealth Games Committee, he was accused of bungling, which is just like fiddling with 11,000 crore
Fucking hell.
rupees. That is three times, 4 times, almost 4 times the amount that was spent on that fucking statue.
Yeah.
And that happened almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, when you've got two sides of a shitty coin, it's very difficult to pick. One thing I will say about this index is that the index is not an absolute ranking of countries where children have the best life, but nations are scored relative to their capacity to implement child regulations or children's rights. So one of the reasons that England is so low, or the UK is so low, is because we have the ability to do so much more. The reason that we're below Yemen, which is basically a bomb site now, is because Yemen do more comparatively to what they can do than the UK does.
Yeah, it's that
We're
simple.
coming towards the end of this, so I'm going to go quick fire questions to you about news stories. So concise, quick replies would be delightful. China. China is ready to use military to safeguard Chinese sovereignty in Hong Kong. I'm not sure if you've seen about the growing protests over in Hong Kong. One of the reasons for this is the anger in Hong Kong over China's plans to bypass Hong Kong legislation and impose national security laws in Hong Kong. This will include a bill to criminalize the ridicule of the Chinese national anthem. Views, thoughts, rights, wrongs, because we've had Trump come out and put sanctions on China, and the UK have come out and said that they are going to widen the visa ability for anyone with a BNO passport, which is a British national overseas passport, which could potentially be like 3 million people in Hong Kong.
Use of military, bad. Making fun of the anthem, again, bad. It's just I don't think
bad?
making fun of the anthem.
You make fun of the anthem. It's one of the things I like about this country. I can tell you that God Save the Queen is one of the dullest things that anyone's ever heard. I don't give a fuck about a god or a queen. They can go fuck themselves.
Intention.
I'm not gonna be fucking killed for it.
Yeah, intention. That's what I'm getting at. So is the intention. But yeah, you can't say it's like, all right, we're gonna kill people to stop people from killing people.
Yes.
It's just bad.
Right. Rio Tinto, which is a mining company, have destroyed a sacred Aborigine site in Western Australia that showed 46,000 years of continued occupation and provided 4,000-year-old genetic link to present-day traditional owners.
Fuck them. They should be shut down immediately.
Yep. Michael Gove has admitted this week that Britain refusing to sign up for human rights safeguards demanded by the EU in exchange for a trade deal, so that the government has the option of changing the Human Rights Act. Now, Gove has claimed that the government may want to enhance legislation on human rights in all sorts of ways. Do you think the government, if they get their hands on human rights, would enhance it for the betterment of everyone?
No, you just told me about the prevent setup. I was
Yes.
like,
Oh no, yeah, they
how
certainly
can
will.
like how can they do something like that and then be like, oh, we're gonna improve? Like, no, I don't believe. No.
But one of the things with these human rights and the European human rights, they're very much a minimum. As with a lot of the stuff with us and the EU, all the standards and everything are minimums.
Okay.
So to say you want to enhance it so you can't be in the EU is bullshit. You can enhance everything. You can put your standards up to the fucking hilt while still having European Court of Human Rights. They're not stopping you from being better. Um,
It's it's
right.
like them giving the cake base and you have to do the decoration and they still
Exactly.
fuck it up.
Um, only 60 people, and this will be the last one. Only 60 people have received Windrush compensation. This has been for. It started a year ago. They've paid out 360,000 has been paid out so far. It's expected to be between 200 and 500 million. One individual has gotten a payment of 100,000, suggesting the other 59 not so much thus far. Why do you think it's been so slow? Thoughts?
It seems to me it's more like what's it called? Corruption. That's the word.
Probably
You know,
dragging
who
their
you're
feet,
friends with.
because dragging their feet at this point for people who a lot of them are still under uh, precarious financial circumstances, lost their jobs because of Windrush and everything else, so they're not in a good financial places, and our government is dragging its feet to give them what very much they deserve. So, final bits. Do you have anything to promote,
Oh,
plug?
I no, I'm an amateur comedian, and I do it for fun. I do have a couple of projects going on, but they happen when they happen. You know, I'm so, thank you for having me on.
Do not
I've
worry. It
learned a
was
lot.
lots of fun.
Really enjoyable.
Yeah, we'll stop the recording, then I'll talk to you afterwards briefly.
Hmm.
So just thank you very much for being on. You've got nothing to plug. We're done. Pete, stop
Follow me
recording.
on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram.
All your stuff will be below. Do not